The blueprint for our narrative is laid. A 45-minute journey awaits, one fraught with luxury, mystery, and a secret that could shatter the fragile bond between a millionaire and the boy he rescued from the streets. We begin with Julian, the aforementioned CEO. He's not your typical Gordon Gekko caricature. Julian made his fortune in sustainable energy, a field he entered not for the money, but for a genuine desire to improve the world. The wealth followed, of course, an avalanche of zeros in his bank account that seemed to mock his otherwise empty life. His penthouse apartment, overlooking the glittering cityscape, felt more like a mausoleum than a home. The gourmet meals prepared by his private chef tasted like ash in his mouth. The bespoke suits hung untouched in his walk-in closet, symbols of a success he had no one to share with. Julian, despite his outward accomplishments, harbored a deep-seated loneliness, a void that no amount of money could fill. He tried dating, of course, but the women he met were more interested in his net worth than his character. He considered starting a family, but the prospect of raising a child alone seemed daunting, almost impossible. That's when the idea struck him: adoption. It wouldn't be a transaction, a business deal like so much of his life had become. It would be an act of pure, selfless giving, a chance to finally use his wealth for something truly meaningful. Little did he know, this decision, born from a place of genuine compassion, would plunge him into a world of genetic engineering, shadowy organizations, and a truth so shocking it would redefine everything he thought he knew about family and humanity. The turning point arrived on a frigid December evening. Julian, unable to stomach another solitary dinner, decided to take a walk, hoping the crisp air would clear his head. The city, usually a symphony of honking taxis and chattering pedestrians, was eerily silent, blanketed in a thick layer of freshly fallen snow. As he rounded a corner, he saw him, a small figure huddled in a doorway, shivering uncontrollably. It was a boy, no older than 10, his face smudged with dirt, his eyes wide with a desperate kind of intelligence. He was wrapped in tattered clothes, clearly inadequate protection against the biting wind. A cardboard sign lay beside him, its hastily scrawled message barely legible: homeless. Hungry. Julian's heart clenched. He'd seen homeless people before, of course, but something about this boy struck a chord deep within him. It wasn't just the boy's vulnerability, it was the spark of intelligence in his eyes, the way he clutched a worn copy of Cosmos by Carl Sagan, its pages dog-eared and stained. Julian knelt down, the snow soaking through his expensive Italian leather shoes. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice thick with concern. The boy looked up, startled. "I'm okay," he mumbled, but his shivering betrayed him. Julian offered him money, but the boy refused. "I don't want your pity," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. Julian was taken aback. This wasn't just another homeless kid, this was someone special, someone with untapped potential. It was in that moment, watching the boy stubbornly cling to his dignity in the face of such hardship, that Julian made his decision. He wouldn't just give him money, he would give him a home, a family, a future. He would adopt him. The adoption process, normally a labyrinthine ordeal of paperwork and interviews, became a surprisingly swift affair, thanks to Julian's resources and determination. He hired the best lawyers, navigated the bureaucratic channels with ruthless efficiency, and charmed the social workers with his genuine desire to provide Alex with a loving home. Within days, Alex was officially his son. Julian learned the boy's name was Alex, though he knew little else about his past. Alex was hesitant to share, his memories fragmented and clouded by trauma. Julian didn't press him. He understood that trust took time, and he was willing to be patient. He focused on creating a safe and nurturing environment for Alex, a stark contrast to the harsh realities he had known on the streets. The penthouse was transformed. The sterile, minimalist decor was softened with colorful artwork, bookshelves overflowing with age-appropriate literature, and a state-of-the-art gaming system, a guilty pleasure Julian indulged in himself. He enrolled Alex in a prestigious private school, ensuring he received the best possible education. He hired tutors to help him catch up on lost time, and therapists to help him process his past experiences. Julian was determined to give Alex every opportunity to thrive, to unlock the potential he saw shimmering beneath the surface of his quiet, reserved demeanor. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Alex was a wounded bird, fragile and wary. But Julian was committed to earning his trust, to proving that he was worthy of his love. He wanted to show Alex that he finally had a place to call home. The initial days were a whirlwind of firsts: Alex's first time sleeping in a real bed, his first hot shower, his first taste of gourmet pizza, which he devoured with gusto, sauce smeared across his cheeks. Julian reveled in these simple joys, finding a purpose and fulfillment he had never known before. He bought Alex everything he could possibly want: designer clothes, the latest video games, even a telescope to fuel his fascination with the cosmos. He watched Alex's eyes light up with each new discovery, and his heart swelled with pride. Julian tried to strike a balance between providing for Alex and spoiling him. He wanted to give him the childhood he deserved, but he also wanted to instill in him a sense of gratitude and responsibility. They spent hours reading together, exploring the city's museums and parks, and simply talking, slowly building a foundation of trust and understanding. Alex, initially withdrawn and guarded, began to open up, sharing glimpses of his past life on the streets, his fears, and his dreams. He was remarkably intelligent, absorbing information like a sponge, his questions insightful and thought-provoking. Julian found himself learning as much from Alex as he was teaching him. He started to feel like a real family. They laughed together, argued, mostly about bedtime, and comforted each other when they were sad. Julian finally had someone to share his life with, someone who loved him for who he was, not for his money. He felt like the luckiest man in the world, unaware that the happiness he had found was built on a foundation of secrets, a foundation that was about to crumble beneath his feet. The first crack in their idyllic world appeared subtly, almost imperceptibly. It started with Alex's uncanny ability to recall minute details from books he had only glanced at. Then there was his aptitude for mathematics, solving complex equations in his head that would stump even Julian's MIT-educated colleagues. And then there was the incident with the security system. Julian, always security conscious, had installed a top-of-the-line system in the penthouse. One afternoon, he found Alex effortlessly bypassing it, disabling the alarms with a few taps on a tablet. When Julian questioned him, Alex simply shrugged and said he had figured it out. It was unsettling, this level of precociousness, this almost unnatural intelligence. Julian initially dismissed it as the result of a neglected genius finally given the opportunity to flourish. But the incidents kept piling up, each one more inexplicable than the last. Alex could play the piano flawlessly after only a few lessons, master foreign languages in weeks, and demonstrate an understanding of quantum physics that defied his age. Julian started to feel a sense of unease, a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. He found himself watching Alex more closely, scrutinizing his every move, searching for answers in his eyes. Was it possible that Alex was hiding something? Could there be more to his story than he had revealed? The loving father in Julian wanted to dismiss these doubts, to cling to the happiness he had found. But the CEO in him, the man who had built his empire on logic and intuition, knew that something was amiss. He needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Torn between his love for Alex and his growing suspicion, Julian decided to take action. He couldn't confront Alex directly, he feared scaring him, jeopardizing the fragile trust they had built. Instead, he opted for a discreet investigation. He contacted Sarah, a renowned private investigator known for her discretion and her ability to uncover the truth, no matter how deeply buried. He presented his concerns to Sarah, carefully avoiding any mention of his fears about Alex's potential deception. He framed the investigation as a precautionary measure, wanting to ensure that Alex hadn't been involved in any criminal activity before he came to live with him. He told Sarah that he needed to know if Alex had been exploited or abused, and that he wanted to protect him from any potential threats. Sarah, a sharp and observant woman, listened intently, her eyes never leaving Julian's face. She sensed that there was more to the story than he was letting on, but she didn't press him. She understood that trust was earned, not demanded. She agreed to take the case, assuring Julian that she would conduct a thorough and discreet investigation. She promised to leave no stone unturned, to uncover every detail of Alex's past, no matter how uncomfortable the truth might be. Julian wrestled with his conscience. He felt like he was betraying Alex's trust, spying on him behind his back. But he justified his actions by telling himself that he was doing it for Alex's own good, that he needed to protect him from whatever secrets he might be hiding. He knew that the truth could shatter their newfound happiness, but he also knew that living with uncertainty would be even worse. He had to know the truth, even if it meant losing everything. Sarah began her investigation by retracing Alex's steps, starting with the streets where Julian had found him. She interviewed local shopkeepers, homeless outreach workers, and anyone who might have encountered Alex in the past. The information she gathered was fragmented and contradictory. Some remembered Alex as a quiet, withdrawn boy who kept to himself. Others recalled him as a gifted chess player who hustled tourists in the park. Still others claimed he possessed an almost supernatural ability to predict the weather. The only consistent detail was the lack of any official records. Alex seemed to exist outside the system, a ghost with no birth certificate, no school records, no medical history. It was as if he had simply materialized out of thin air. Frustrated by the lack of concrete information, Sarah delved deeper, following the faintest of leads. She discovered a connection to a series of abandoned warehouses on the outskirts of the city, places where homeless children often sought shelter. One particular warehouse yielded a clue, a faded photograph tucked inside a discarded textbook. The photograph showed a group of children in lab coats, standing in front of a building with a barely legible sign that read, "See ******* Research Institute." The children's faces were blurred, but Sarah noticed a striking resemblance between one of the children and Alex. The discovery was unsettling. It suggested a connection to a scientific facility, a place where children were subjected to experimentation. Sarah knew she was on the verge of uncovering something significant, something that could change everything for Julian and Alex. Back at the penthouse, Alex was exhibiting more strange behaviors. He had developed a peculiar aversion to smartphones and other modern devices. Whenever Julian tried to show him a new app or game, Alex would recoil, his eyes filled with a strange mixture of fear and revulsion. He preferred books and board games, anything that didn't involve screens or electronic circuits. One evening, Julian found Alex staring intently at the television screen, transfixed by a documentary about artificial intelligence. When Julian asked him what he was thinking, Alex replied, "It's dangerous. They shouldn't be playing God." The comment, coming from a 10-year-old boy, was chilling. It reinforced Julian's growing suspicion that Alex knew more than he was letting on, that he possessed a knowledge that was beyond his years. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to dig into the mystery of the Research Institute. She discovered that the facility had been shut down abruptly several years ago, following the death of its lead scientist, Dr. Alastair Caldwell. The official cause of death was a heart attack, but rumors persisted of foul play, of a clandestine research project gone awry. Sarah tracked down former employees of the institute, but they were reluctant to talk, citing non-disclosure agreements and fears for their safety. However, one former technician, speaking under the condition of anonymity, revealed that Dr. Caldwell had been obsessed with genetic engineering, with creating a new generation of superintelligent children. The technician hinted that Dr. Caldwell had been conducting experiments on human subjects, using gene editing techniques to enhance their cognitive abilities. He claimed that Alex might have been one of those subjects. The weight of the evidence was becoming unbearable. Julian could no longer ignore the mounting signs that Alex was not who he seemed to be. The boy's aversion to technology, his uncanny intelligence, the connection to the shadowy research institute, it all pointed to a single, terrifying conclusion: Alex was the product of genetic manipulation. Armed with this knowledge, Julian knew he had to confront Alex. He waited for the right moment, a quiet evening after dinner when they were both relaxed and comfortable. He sat Alex down on the sofa, took his hand, and looked him in the eye. "Alex," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "there are some things I need to ask you. Things about your past." Alex's face paled. He tried to pull his hand away, but Julian held on tight. "Sarah, the private investigator I hired, she's been looking into your past. And she's discovered some things that are hard to believe." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Alex, do you know anything about a place called the Caldwell Research Institute?" Alex's eyes widened. He stared at Julian, his expression a mixture of fear and confusion. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "I've never heard of that place." Julian pressed on, gently but firmly. "Alex, please. I need you to be honest with me. Sarah found a photograph of you, a photograph taken at that institute. You were wearing a lab coat." Alex remained silent, his eyes darting around the room, as if searching for an escape. Julian knew he was close to the truth. He just needed Alex to confirm it. "You're not being honest with me, Alex," Julian insisted, his voice laced with disappointment. "I know you're scared, but you can trust me. Whatever happened to you, I can help you. But you have to tell me the truth." Alex finally broke down, tears streaming down his face. "I don't know. I don't remember anything. It's all blurry, like a dream." He sobbed uncontrollably, clutching at Julian's shirt. "Please, Daddy, don't be mad at me. I didn't do anything wrong." Julian's heart ached. He pulled Alex close, wrapping his arms around him. He wanted to believe him, to dismiss the doubts that were gnawing at his soul. But the evidence was too strong, the inconsistencies too glaring. He couldn't simply ignore the truth, no matter how painful it might be. "I'm not mad at you, Alex," he said softly, stroking his hair. "I just want to understand. I want to help you remember." Alex pulled away, his eyes filled with anger and resentment. "You don't believe me," he shouted. "You think I'm some kind of monster. You think I'm lying to you." He jumped up and ran to his room, slamming the door behind him. Julian sat there, stunned, the weight of his decision crushing him. He had pushed Alex too far, jeopardized their relationship in his desperate search for the truth. He had to find a way to bridge the gap, to regain Alex's trust. But first, he needed to know the full extent of Alex's past, to understand the forces that were shaping his life. He knew he couldn't do it alone. He needed Sarah's help, now more than ever. The next morning, Sarah arrived at Julian's penthouse, her face grim. "I know the truth about Alex," she said, her voice low and serious. She laid out her findings, a carefully constructed narrative pieced together from fragmented memories, whispered rumors, and encrypted files recovered from Dr. Caldwell's abandoned laboratory. "Alex is the product of Project Chimera," Sarah explained. "A secret genetics program funded by a shadowy group of investors. Dr. Caldwell's goal was to create a child prodigy, a human with unparalleled intelligence and cognitive abilities. He used gene editing techniques to enhance Alex's brain function, manipulating his DNA to unlock hidden potential." Julian listened in stunned silence, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. Alex's extraordinary intelligence, his aversion to technology, his fragmented memories, it all made sense now. But why was he homeless? Julian asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Project Chimera was shut down after Dr. Caldwell's death," Sarah replied. "The investors pulled their funding, and the facility was abandoned. Alex, along with the other children involved in the project, were left to fend for themselves. Their memories were wiped, their identities erased. They were simply cast aside, like failed experiments." The revelation was devastating. Julian had taken Alex into his home, believing he was rescuing a vulnerable child from the streets. But he had unknowingly adopted a scientific experiment, a living testament to human hubris and ethical recklessness. He felt a surge of anger towards Dr. Caldwell, towards the shadowy investors who had funded his twisted experiments. But more than anything, he felt a profound sense of sadness for Alex, for the childhood he had lost, for the burden he now carried. Julian was reeling. The revelation that Alex was a science experiment shattered his perception of reality. Was Alex even capable of genuine emotion, or was everything a programmed response, a carefully calibrated algorithm? He looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with desperation. "What do I do now?" he asked. "How can I help him?" Sarah paused, her expression thoughtful. "The most important thing is to be there for him," she said. "He's been through a lot, and he needs someone he can trust. He needs to know that you love him, regardless of his past." She added, "There's something else you need to know. I've discovered that the investors behind Project Chimera are still out there. And they're looking for Alex." Julian's blood ran cold. "Why?" he asked. "What do they want with him?" Sarah explained that the investors saw Alex as a valuable asset, a potential weapon. They wanted to exploit his enhanced abilities for their own gain, to use him to further their nefarious agenda. "They won't hesitate to use force to get him back," she warned. "You need to protect him, Julian. He's in danger." Suddenly, the stakes had been raised. Julian was no longer just a loving father, he was a protector, a guardian. He had to shield Alex from the forces that were seeking to exploit him, to ensure that he had a chance to live a normal life. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He was up against powerful and ruthless adversaries. But he was determined to fight for Alex, to defend the boy he had come to love as his own son. Just as Sarah finished speaking, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside the penthouse. Two men in dark suits emerged, their faces impassive. "They're here," Sarah said, her voice tight with urgency. "We need to get out of here, now." Julian grabbed Alex, who was still in his room, lost in his own thoughts. "We have to go," he said, his voice urgent but calm. "There are some bad people who want to take you away." Alex, sensing the danger, didn't argue. He grabbed his backpack and followed Julian and Sarah out of the penthouse, through a secret passage that Julian had installed for emergencies. They raced down the stairs, bypassing the elevators, and emerged into a hidden alleyway behind the building. Sarah had a car waiting, its engine running. They piled in and sped away, just as the men from the SUV reached the front entrance of the penthouse. A high-speed chase ensued through the city streets, the black SUV relentlessly pursuing them. Sarah, a skilled driver, navigated the traffic with precision, dodging cars and weaving through intersections. Julian held Alex tight, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that these men wouldn't stop until they had Alex in their grasp. They managed to evade their pursuers, losing them in the maze of city streets. They drove to a safe house that Sarah had prepared, a secluded cabin in the mountains outside the city. They were safe for now, but Julian knew that it was only a temporary reprieve. The investors behind Project Chimera were powerful and resourceful. They would stop at nothing to get Alex back. The battle had just begun. At the safe house, Julian tried to talk to Alex, to explain what was happening. But Alex was withdrawn, silent, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. He seemed to be struggling to process the truth about his past, to reconcile the boy he was with the experiment he had been. Julian knew he couldn't force him to talk. He had to give him time, to let him come to terms with the reality at his own pace. Sarah, meanwhile, was busy setting up security measures, reinforcing the cabin's defenses, and monitoring communications. She knew that their pursuers would be relentless, that they would use every resource at their disposal to find them. "They'll be tracking our phones, monitoring our bank accounts, scanning surveillance footage," she said. "We need to stay one step ahead of them." Julian realized that he had to use his own resources to fight back. He contacted his network of contacts, calling in favors, and gathering information about the investors behind Project Chimera. He discovered that they were a powerful and secretive group, with ties to government agencies, corporations, and criminal organizations. They were involved in a wide range of illegal activities, from arms trafficking to drug smuggling to genetic engineering. They saw Alex as a key to unlocking even greater power and wealth. Julian knew that he was facing a formidable enemy. But he was determined to protect Alex, to prevent him from being exploited by these ruthless individuals. He would use every weapon at his disposal, his wealth, his influence, his intelligence, to ensure that Alex had a chance to live a free and normal life. He would fight for him, tooth and nail, until his last breath. The next few days were a blur of paranoia and preparation. Julian, Sarah, and Alex remained secluded in the safe house, constantly on edge, waiting for the inevitable attack. Sarah had set up a sophisticated surveillance system, monitoring the perimeter of the cabin, and intercepting communications. Julian, meanwhile, was using his computer skills to track the movements of the investors, trying to anticipate their next move. One morning, Sarah intercepted a coded message, revealing that the investors were planning to raid the safe house that night. They knew exactly where they were, and they were coming with overwhelming force. Julian and Sarah realized that they couldn't stay and defend the cabin. They had to escape, to find a new hiding place. They packed their belongings, gathered their weapons, and prepared to leave. Just as they were about to exit the cabin, Alex spoke for the first time in days. "I can help," he said, his voice barely audible. "I know how to get away." Julian and Sarah exchanged glances, unsure of what to expect. Alex led them to a hidden tunnel beneath the cabin, a secret escape route that Dr. Caldwell had built in case of emergency. The tunnel led them to a remote forest trail, far from the cabin and their pursuers. They fled through the woods, their footsteps muffled by the snow. They were exhausted, hungry, and scared, but they were determined to survive. They knew that the investors were relentless, that they would never give up. But they were also resourceful and resilient. They would use every trick in the book to evade capture, to protect Alex from the clutches of the shadowy organization. The cat-and-mouse game had begun, and the stakes were higher than ever before. Their escape through the woods was fraught with peril. They were constantly looking over their shoulders, listening for the sound of their pursuers. Sarah used her tracking skills to navigate the treacherous terrain, while Julian relied on his knowledge of survival techniques to keep them alive. They found shelter in abandoned cabins, scavenged for food, and avoided contact with other people. On one occasion, they were cornered by a group of armed men. Sarah engaged them in a fierce gunfight, using her skills as a marksman to take them down one by one. Julian, despite his lack of combat experience, fought bravely, protecting Alex from harm. Just when they thought they were outnumbered, Alex stepped forward, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. He used his enhanced cognitive abilities to disorient the men, creating illusions and manipulating their perceptions. The men, confused and disoriented, stumbled and fell, allowing Julian and Sarah to escape. Another time, they were trapped in a blizzard, their bodies freezing, their hope dwindling. Alex, using his knowledge of meteorology, predicted a break in the storm, guiding them to a cave where they found shelter from the elements. He used his perfect memory to recall ancient survival techniques, teaching them how to build a fire and find food in the wilderness. These close calls and displays of Alex's unique abilities strengthened the bond between them. Julian saw Alex not just as a science experiment, but as a resourceful and courageous young man. He realized that Alex was not a weapon to be exploited, but a person to be loved and protected. He vowed to do everything in his power to keep him safe, to help him find his place in the world. As they continued to evade their pursuers, Sarah proved to be an invaluable ally. Her skills as a private investigator were not limited to uncovering secrets, she was also a master of disguise, a skilled hacker, and an expert in covert operations. She used her knowledge of the criminal underworld to anticipate the organization's moves, setting traps and creating diversions to throw them off their trail. She also helped Julian understand the inner workings of the organization, revealing their weaknesses and vulnerabilities. She taught him how to use encrypted communication channels, how to create false identities, and how to disappear without a trace. She transformed him from a wealthy CEO into a resourceful operative, capable of fighting back against a powerful enemy. Sarah's motivations were not entirely altruistic. She had a personal vendetta against the organization, a score to settle for past wrongs. She had lost a loved one to their greed and corruption, and she was determined to bring them down, no matter the cost. She saw Alex as a key to achieving her goal, a weapon to be used against her enemies. But as she spent more time with Julian and Alex, she began to develop a genuine affection for them. She saw the love that Julian had for Alex, the unwavering commitment to protect him. She saw the innocence and vulnerability beneath Alex's extraordinary abilities. She realized that they were not just pawns in a game, but real people with real emotions. She began to fight not just for revenge, but for justice, for the chance to give Alex a better future. As they continued their flight, Alex began to experience vivid flashbacks, fragments of his past life at the Caldwell Institute. He remembered the sterile white walls, the cold metal tables, the constant stream of tests and experiments. He remembered Dr. Caldwell, a stern but charismatic figure who treated him more like a lab rat than a human being. He also remembered the other children, his fellow subjects in Project Chimera. They were all brilliant, all gifted with extraordinary abilities. But they were also isolated, deprived of love and affection, treated as tools to be used and discarded. He recalled snippets of conversations he had overheard, whispers about the organization's sinister intentions. They wanted to use their enhanced intelligence to develop new weapons, to manipulate global markets, to control the world. The memories were terrifying, but they also gave Alex a sense of purpose. He realized that he couldn't simply run and hide. He had to fight back, to prevent the organization from using his abilities for evil. He shared his memories with Julian and Sarah, revealing the full extent of the organization's depravity. He told them about their plans to weaponize his intelligence, to turn him into a living weapon. Julian and Sarah were horrified by what they heard. They knew that they had to stop the organization, not just to protect Alex, but to prevent them from unleashing their twisted vision upon the world. They decided to go on the offensive, to take the fight to the enemy. They would use all their resources, all their skills, all their cunning, to bring the organization down. They knew that they couldn't simply attack the organization head-on. They were too powerful, too well-connected. They needed a plan, a strategy that would expose their crimes to the world and dismantle their operation from within. They decided to focus on gathering evidence, documenting the organization's illegal activities, and leaking it to the media. Sarah used her hacking skills to infiltrate the organization's computer networks, downloading confidential documents and exposing their financial transactions. Julian used his business acumen to uncover their shell corporations and offshore accounts, revealing the extent of their wealth and influence. Alex, using his perfect memory, recalled the names of key individuals involved in the organization, providing valuable leads for Sarah to investigate. They worked tirelessly, day and night, gathering evidence, building their case. They knew that they were taking a huge risk, that they were putting their lives on the line. But they were determined to expose the organization's crimes, to bring them to justice. They planned to leak the information to a trusted journalist, someone who would be willing to risk their career to publish the truth. They also planned to contact law enforcement agencies, providing them with the evidence they needed to launch a full-scale investigation. They knew that the organization would stop at nothing to silence them. But they were prepared for anything. They had a plan, they had a purpose, and they had each other. They were ready to fight for what they believed in, to protect Alex from the clutches of the organization, and to bring them to justice. The organization, realizing that they were being targeted, launched a counteroffensive. They used their resources to track down Julian, Sarah, and Alex, cornering them in a remote warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Julian knew that this was it, the final confrontation. They had to make a stand, to fight for their lives and for the future of the world. They prepared for battle, setting traps, barricading the entrances, and arming themselves with weapons. They knew that they were outnumbered, but they were determined to fight to the end. The organization stormed the warehouse, a team of heavily armed mercenaries, led by a ruthless commander. A fierce firefight erupted, bullets flying, explosions rocking the building. Sarah used her skills as a marksman to pick off the mercenaries one by one, while Julian used his knowledge of the warehouse layout to outmaneuver them. Alex, using his enhanced intelligence, hacked into the organization's communication system, disrupting their commands and creating chaos. But the mercenaries were relentless, and they slowly began to gain the upper hand. Julian was wounded, Sarah was running out of ammunition, and Alex was becoming exhausted. Just when they thought they were about to be overwhelmed, Alex had an idea. He used his abilities to manipulate the warehouse's electrical system, triggering a massive power surge that knocked out the lights and disabled the organization's communication equipment. In the ensuing darkness, Julian, Sarah, and Alex used their skills to their advantage. Sarah, with her night vision goggles, picked off the remaining mercenaries, while Julian used his knowledge of the warehouse to create diversions and traps. Alex, meanwhile, used his enhanced intelligence to access the organization's main server, located in a hidden room within the warehouse. He uploaded all the evidence they had gathered, exposing the organization's crimes to the world. He also located the files containing information about the other children involved in Project Chimera, revealing their locations and identities. He sent an anonymous message to law enforcement agencies, urging them to rescue the children and bring the organization to justice. The authorities responded swiftly. Police cars and ambulances swarmed the warehouse, arresting the remaining mercenaries and rescuing the children. The organization's leaders were apprehended, their crimes exposed to the world. Project Chimera was shut down for good. In the aftermath of the battle, Julian, Sarah, and Alex were hailed as heroes. They had risked their lives to expose a dangerous organization, to protect innocent children, and to fight for what was right. They had proven that even the most powerful enemies can be brought down with courage, intelligence, and determination. But more importantly, they had learned the true meaning of family, the power of love, and the importance of fighting for what you believe in. With the organization dismantled and its leaders behind bars, the surviving children of Project Chimera were placed in specialized care facilities, where they received the medical and psychological support they needed to heal from their trauma. Julian, using his wealth and influence, established a foundation to support these children, ensuring that they had access to the best possible education, healthcare, and counseling. He also worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the dangers of genetic engineering, advocating for stricter regulations and ethical guidelines. He became a vocal critic of those who sought to exploit scientific advancements for their own gain, warning against the dangers of playing God. Sarah, her vendetta finally satisfied, decided to use her skills as a private investigator to help other victims of crime. She established a non-profit organization that provided free investigative services to those who couldn't afford them, fighting for justice for the voiceless and the marginalized. As for Alex, he finally began to come to terms with his past, to embrace his unique abilities, and to find his place in the world. He continued to live with Julian, who remained his loving and supportive father. He excelled in school, pursuing his passion for science and mathematics. He also became an advocate for other children who had been subjected to genetic experimentation, using his story to inspire hope and to promote ethical research. Life for Julian and Alex settled into a comfortable rhythm, a blend of normalcy and extraordinary experiences. Alex continued his education, devouring knowledge with his insatiable curiosity. Julian, no longer consumed by his business, dedicated his time to his foundation and to spending quality time with Alex. They traveled the world, exploring different cultures, learning new languages, and experiencing the wonders of the universe. They visited ancient ruins, climbed snow-capped mountains, and explored the depths of the ocean. They shared laughter, tears, and countless moments of joy. Their bond deepened with each passing year, forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by love and understanding. They had overcome incredible challenges, faced unimaginable dangers, and emerged stronger than ever before. They had proven that family is not defined by blood, but by love, loyalty, and commitment. Julian, who had once been a lonely and isolated millionaire, had finally found his purpose in life. He had discovered the true meaning of happiness, the joy of giving, and the power of unconditional love. Alex, who had once been a homeless and forgotten child, had finally found a place to call home. He had discovered his worth, his potential, and the love of a father. They were an unconventional family, forged in the crucible of extraordinary circumstances, but their bond was unbreakable, their love eternal. Years later, Julian, now an older but no less energetic man, stood before a crowd of children at a newly opened community center. The center, funded by his foundation, was dedicated to providing a safe and nurturing environment for vulnerable children, those who had been abandoned, abused, or exploited. He looked at the faces of the children, their eyes filled with hope and resilience, and he saw a reflection of Alex, the boy he had rescued from the streets, the boy who had changed his life forever. He knew that he couldn't save every child in the world, but he could make a difference, one child at a time. He dedicated his remaining wealth to this cause, ensuring that the foundation would continue to support vulnerable children for generations to come. He traveled the world, speaking at conferences, raising awareness, and inspiring others to get involved. He became a champion for the voiceless, a protector of the innocent, a beacon of hope in a world often filled with darkness. Alex, now a brilliant young scientist, often accompanied Julian on his travels, sharing his own story, inspiring other children to overcome their challenges and to pursue their dreams. He used his scientific knowledge to develop new technologies to help those in need, creating innovative solutions to address poverty, hunger, and disease. Together, Julian and Alex continued to make a difference in the world, their bond stronger than ever before. They had proven that even the most unlikely of families can achieve great things, that love can conquer all, and that hope can triumph over despair. Their story became a legend, a testament to the power of compassion, the importance of